by the way, was the message. And all I can add to it is how I finally got it. And I'd like to begin with making a confession. This may surprise some of you, but I have not always been as brilliant as I am now. If you don't believe me, ask Beth. Now, she doesn't usually talk about it, but she knows. When Beth and I met, I was spiritually challenged. I'd been raised in a family that worshipped at the shrine of lack and limitation, and that's understandable. My father worked in the public school system, and few people say that educators are overpaid. My mother stayed at home, and my siblings were ages 4 and 5 when the stock market crashed in 1929. They grew up during the Great Depression, and the country was still depressed when I was born. I didn't even know what the word abundance meant. Now, before the Depression ended, the war started. And that's when I learned that I couldn't have any of the things I wanted for the duration. Now, I didn't know what a duration was. But I knew it was expected to last for a very long time, maybe forever. I knew what lack and limitation was. I expected very little, and guess what I got? Now, the problem with all that is that lack and limitation can become a part of your comfort zone. And it was part of mine until I met Beth. Before that, nobody in my experience had ever suggested that I might count my blessings. Now, I wasn't even in the habit of thinking about blessings. We hadn't known each other for very long when Beth asked what was my dream, and that was not a fair question. I didn't know what a dream was. I thought and thought about it. What had I ever really wanted? What had I wanted my life to be? Well, I had had some success as a runner. I really wanted to run a mile faster than 4 minutes. Now, back in the day when that might have happened, 4-minute miles were not as common as they are now. It didn't happen then. And now I was in my 50s. It sure wasn't going to happen now. Now, I'm told that all things are possible with God, so I guess God never intended for me to run a 4-minute mile. But I answered Beth the best I could. My dreams are all in the past, I said. At my age, I have no more dreams. Now, Beth didn't take that very well, but we're still together. And that's why I now believe in miracles. Now, Beth went right ahead and explained to me the importance of dreams, and then she told me about her dream. She said, I'm going to be a unity minister. Now, she didn't say, I'd like to be a unity minister. She said, I'm going to be. And her certainty impressed me. But to be perfectly honest, I didn't know what unity was. I heard the word minister, and I thought, that's just great. I haven't been to a church in more than 35 years, and I'm interested in a woman who wants to be a minister. And I thought about the hours that I might have to spend in church. And then I thought, how much fun can this be? As I said before, we're still together. It's got to be by the grace of God. Now, what happened next is akin to being swept up in a tornado. From then on, everything that happened to me was prefaced by the phrase, before I knew it. Before I figured out what unity is, I was the assistant to the spiritual leader of the Unity Church of Castro Valley, California. And I wasn't even married to the woman yet. Now I figured out what my problem was. I was a late bloomer. I was a late bloomer physically. I was smaller than the other kids my age, and I'm still hoping that I will grow to be over 6 feet tall, just like all the other males in my family. I was a late bloomer mentally. In the 3rd grade, I was assumed to be retarded. Their word, not mine. In the 4th grade, to the surprise of my 3rd grade teacher, I was moved ahead a half a grade. I was definitely a late bloomer spiritually. I'm not fully developed yet, but thanks to Beth, I'm getting closer. Now, being the assistant to a spiritual leader has its challenges. Beth and I were living together, but we weren't married. Some of the older members of the congregation decided that we should be married. She was the spiritual leader, after all. We were supposed to set a good example. I began to feel pressure. It became less and less subtle as the weeks passed into months and then a year. Finally, I agreed. One Sunday, during the peace circle at the end of the service, I got down on my knees, presented Beth with the ring, and asked her to marry me. Now, to make sure that all of the witnesses heard me, a board member put a microphone into my hand. And to make sure I couldn't forget